Welcome back to the Ed Show. In the shadow of world leaders gathering at the UN General Assembly and talks of defeating ISIS, Iran has a different agenda. It wants to keep its nuclear program intact. Iran is negotiating with 6 world powers to meet a November 24th deadline for a long-term agreement potentially ending sanctions on Tehran in exchange for curbs on its nuclear program. Secretary of State John Kerry met with Iranian Foreign Minister on Sunday. Here's what he said after the meeting.
This is a fight for the region. Every country in the region is deeply threatened by this, and that includes Iran, includes Lebanon, includes all of the neighborhood. And it is absolutely fair and appropriate for the world to expect that that region will fight for itself.
Iranian officials have said Tehran would be ready to work with Western powers to stop Islamic State militants, but it's pushing for sanctions to be lifted on the country. The country wants to be able to enrich uranium. Enriched uranium can produce material for bombs. But Iran denies it wants nuclear weapons. The number of uranium centrifuges in the country is at a sticking point in all of these negotiations. Iran reportedly has more than 19,000 centrifuges. Around 10,000 of those are operational. Iranian officials say that they would like the United States to show flexibility on the number of centrifuges Tehran could keep under any long-term agreement. The United States has proposed Iran reduce its number of centrifuges from 19,000 to 1,500 in return for lifting economic sanctions. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has questioned the legality of airstrikes against Syria by the United States. Joining me tonight on a rapid response panel, Joe Cirincione, president of Plowshares Fund, a global security foundation, and also with us James Traub, who is a columnist for foreignpolicy.com and fellow at the Center on International Cooperation. Gentlemen, great to have you with us tonight. Joe, you first. You have recently visited with the Iranian president, Rouhani. What's his negotiating strength on this issue at this point as you see it?
Well, I had dinner with the president last night in New York and Foreign Minister Zarif. There was about 25 of us, former officials, former diplomats, a very candid discussion, tough questions, and some good answers. We were struck by his pragmatism. President Rouhani is striking similar themes to those you heard from President Obama today. That is, we can make a deal. Let's ensure that Iran only uses its nuclear technology for peaceful purposes. Let's put in place a vigorous inspection regime so that we can catch any breakout if there is one, and let's use a deal on the nuclear technology as a stepping stone to cooperation on these other vital issues. A lot of the discussion has moved on from a year ago when it was solely on the nuclear program. Now there are bigger threats, bigger challenges in the region. I think both presidents want to make a deal.
But Joe, aren't they using the situation right now to their advantage? How do we know we can trust them?
Well, it's a mutual pressure. Yes, we want Iran's cooperation in fighting ISIS. You want boots on the ground? The Revolutionary Guard are boots on the ground. They are fighting ISIS in Iraq. But Iran is also threatened by ISIS. They need our help. They don't have the kind of air power you've seen in the last couple of days. So these developments are actually pushing the two nations together towards cooperation. There is a deal to be reached. Yes, they have 10,000. We want to cut that number of centrifuges in half. So where's the magic figure? Do they have to be completely eliminated, or can they just be disconnected? I don't believe plumbing is going to come in the way of a deal to stop Iran's nuclear program.
Mr. Traub, how much of a gamble is this, going down the road to possibly lifting sanctions when obviously Israel doesn't want the United States to do that, to alienate the Israelis and to jeopardize? Or would it make that a little bit more unstable?
Yeah, well, and I think you brought up a very important point, which is I couldn't agree more than I do with Joe, which is that both leaders are clearly deeply invested in getting a solution to this problem. If it were left to the two of them, we probably would already have a solution. We certainly would have one before the new due date of November 24th. Each one, though, of course, is pulled by various lobbies and pressures of people who don't want to have this deal. And so I think the really tough is going to be not only on the American side. Yes, you're absolutely right. It's certainly the Israelis are extremely nervous about this, and they see the good deal that Joe described as a form of capitulation, as do many members of the United States Congress, Republican and Democratic. The Iranians are subject to almost the exact same, really symmetrical kind of pressures. And I think what we've been hearing in recent weeks is that on the side of the Iranian hardliners, there's a belief that the American need for cooperation allows them to cut a much better deal. That puts Rouhani under pressure because it means the deal that he wants looks bad to them.
Well, it's more complicated by the hour. The complexity of this issue with the Iranians and the negotiations. I mean, this is the most movement we've seen. It's an opportunistic move, I think, on the part of the Iranians. What have they done in the last 30 years that would lend us to believe, Joe, or Mr. Traub, let me ask you, to lend us to believe that all of a sudden they could be an honest broker in this?
Well, that's a question. You're right. It's a genuine gamble. The gamble is, first of all, that the Iranians have tremendous national interest in solving this problem. Iran sees itself as a great world power and a great world civilization. And they've humbled themselves by their dedication to a nuclear program. It's really had a devastating effect. They want to get out of that. At the same time, let me say a second thing, which is, A, they want to get out of that, and B, Rouhani is a different kind of person. One, he's really dedicated to this, and two, unlike some of his predecessors, he has influence with the clerical establishment. He is more able to drive a bargain.
Yeah. Well, let me just but in the middle of all this, Joe, here you have Rouhani is questioning the legality of whether the United States should be hitting Syria or not.
Yes, as have some of the guests on your program. This is what's so interesting. When he talks about this, he's not pointing the finger of blame. He's not castigating. This is not the former leader Ahmadinejad attacking the United States. This is a leader that has serious differences with the U.S. approach, as have not too different from some of the guests on your program. And that's what's so interesting about Rouhani's visit this year as opposed to last year. It's not the same electricity. Right. It's not the same excitement. It's a normalization. We are seeing U.S.-Iran relations start to normalize.
All right, Joe Cirincione, James Traub, great to have you gentlemen with us tonight on The Ed Show. Thanks so much. Still ahead, conservative